we move to the top wine of the estate. So as you mentioned, is Sodi di S.Niccolò. And at this time we have, for my personal opinion, one of the most beautiful vintages for sure in my career. 2016 was a great season, starting from the spring and going to the fall. One of the longest season, especially for Sangiovese. And as you know, Antonio, so when you have a long seasons, is always synonymous of top wines, no? Because when you have a long and beautiful phenolic maturation, so that is really important. And this wine is produced since 1979, the first wine of the property, made from the oldest vineyard of the property with 85% Sangiovese and 15% Malvasia Nera, vinified in stainless steel with a very high selection in the vineyard first and in the cellar after, and aged in French oak barrels for 24 months. 70% is new oak and 30% is second time. Production is around 30,000 bottles.
So, okay, time. Okay, so this wine, I think it was the first time I met Dr. Panerai. I'm not sure if we had met before, Alessandro, or not, but maybe about in 2006 or 2007, we did a vertical of this wine back to the beginning. And so that's almost 15 years.
I have in front of me now, in this room, I have your vertical tasting that we have a beautiful poster.
Okay. And so what those tastings like that allow you to do is to understand how wines evolve, how places behave over time. And so they're very educational, and that's, why I like to do those tastings. So, one of the other things that I think about when I'm tasting a wine is I'm mentally, I don't have a very good memory for a lot of things, but I have a pretty good memory for wine. And so I remember the past vintages and what was this wine like, and you're sort of trying to think about how do I place this in context and how is this wine going to evolve. But what you mentioned before, people may not know, the reason why the long growing season is important is because you need the cooler temperatures at night in the fall to give you what is called in technical terms a diurnal shift in English, which is that you want the heat during the day and you want cold at night, which gives you natural color and aromatics. It gives you a better chance of having alcoholic and physical ripeness at the same time, because when it's hot, you have a diversion. You've got the ripeness of the sugar is faster than the ripeness of the seeds in the skin. So that's hard for winemakers. You have to decide when to pick. Earlier or later, it's riskier. So the late season gives you more homogeneous maturity, I think. It gives you the natural color, the aromatics. And then you have the final phase of ripening when the days are shorter. And so there's obviously the sun is gentler at the end of September, or if you go into October than it is in August. And so that's one of the things that creates a vintage that's considered a great vintage. And 2016 in Tuscany is definitely one of them, as I've written before. And this one is also very restrained, but it's restrained in a more aristocratic way. And when you taste this wine, it's like you feel like you're talking to a prince or a princess. It's sort of, very elegant, signorile in Italian, you would say, but also reserved. It doesn't give you everything right away either. But, as people know who've read my writing, I've always been a fan of this wine, so I'm not surprised to see it like this. Here, for example, you have 24 months in oak, 70% new, but there's no sensation of oak at all. And that, again, is the signal of I believe that wines have to be, like, at this level, we're talking a totally different level of price and standing and history. but I think great wines have to be great from the very beginning. And I think this was something that Takis believes too, that the wine is born, it's balanced at the beginning as it balance it's going to have forever. And so
Yes.
when you taste the wine like this, you don't want to drink it right now. You'd like to age it for a few years, but there's no sensation of oak. There's not much of a sensation of tannin. I mean, you can tell it's there, but the fruit wraps it. And that to me is something I'm looking for in a young wine of this, at this category, which is that nothing really stands out in the wine. You know, that is the difference between the 18 Chianti Classico and the 16 Sodi di S.Niccolò. In the 18, you can see the parts. You can pick it apart because it's not fully homogenized. In the Sodi, the wine is one. It's harmonious. It's completely balanced. You could say, do the aromatics stand out? Not especially. Do the tannins stand out? Not especially. Does the oak stand out? Nope. Does the fruit stand out? No. One of the things that I look for in a young wine is that nothing stands out, because that means that the wine is in really good balance, and that balance makes it likely that it's going to age really well over time. So that's kind of what I look for when I taste a young wine that is built for cellaring, is its balance at the beginning. That's it.
You mentioned one beautiful word. It's harmony. No, I think in this wine it's really made in this direction. To be a perfect balance. So it's nothing is in a different level of the others. So it's the tannins, the completely the phenolic composition of this wine is perfectly balanced. I totally agree with you. And again, 2016 is for me one of the greatest vintage since I am in Castellare working in with this wine since 1995. But for sure, this is one of my best vintages since my beginning.
I have a question because I don't remember the answer, but is the Malvasia Nera interplanted with the Sangiovese and co-fermented, or is it separate and vinified separately?
It's vinified separate, because Malvasia Nera, the ripeness of Malvasia Nera is a little bit later than the Sangiovese. It's about 1 week later. Normally, it's about 1 week later. So we ferment separately, and then we blend at the end of fermentation. And starting for the malolactic fermentation, the wine is completely blended. So it's just the alcoholic fermentation is made separately. Sometimes we do the two things different, but then we blend immediately after. Just even if the little part of sugar is still there, we blend, and we do also the part of maceration all together. Because sometimes when the Malvasia Nera is the harvest is made in almost the same time, but normally it's few days later.
And is the malolactic fermentation in steel for this wine, or in barrel?
It's in concrete.
In concrete.
We do all of our wines in Castellare is malolactic fermentation is made in concrete, 100%. So after the alcoholic fermentation, we try to move out the wine from the stainless steel, because as Giacomo Tacchi said, when the wine is finished, so after the malolactic fermentation in stainless steel, the wine is always incazzato, no? So it's always nervous.
That's a polite translation.
Yeah.
I won't get the real one, but but people like concrete because it breathes, right? That's the reason why you like concrete. The stainless steel keeps the wine very tight, and concrete gets a little bit more,
Yeah, and stainless steel is full of electric charge, electrostatic charge, and then the electrostatic charge make the wine always nervous, no? So it's in movement. So the wine after the malolactic need quiet and to breathe, and the concrete is a perfect ambient to breathe.